Hey, you're listening to the Story Hacker Podcast. My name is Nick. Today we are talking about firefighters, enablers, and dirty delegation.
You're listening to the Story Hacker Podcast.
What's good? What's good? Hey, my name is Nick. I am your Story Hacker host. This Story Podcast is soon to be the StoryBetter Podcast. And if you're new here, we've been holding it down since 2016, making podcasts around the brain science of narrative psychology. Those things include marketing, script writing, and of course, storytelling. And what I want to let you know today is that the big problem that we want to solve is really what's the story we're telling ourselves about ourselves in the world around us, and specifically at work. A couple of episodes ago, we talked about StoryBetter at work. This is a continuation of that. And this is something about the roles in organizations and specifically leadership in organizations. You see, the problem is our dysfunction, whether that's physiological, emotional, whatever dysfunction that we have in ourselves. And we all have a bias. We all have a dysfunction. We all have something or another that maybe doesn't align well. There's very, very few well-adjusted humans in the world today. And what I mean by that is that there are certain factors in our world that really push us outside of what we would consider normative human psychology from even 100 years ago, from things like social media asking us to focus so much on ourselves to different other things of our hyper-capitalistic society that is just saying more is better. And when you look at the wages of somebody today compared to somebody 50 years ago, you can really see that there's only been a bit of an uptick in happiness and in joy and in financial prosperity, even though productivity has skyrocketed. So what is the problem? Why do we have such a interesting society? Interesting is a very kind word, I would say. But why do we have such an interesting society when it comes to work and the way that we work? And so today I want to talk about firefighters, enablers, and dirty delegation and how we're going to get to this truth that the roles in our work essentially can wreck us. They can wreck the entire organization. And I want to start off with my story. A couple of months ago, I started to realize, more and more through reading of books. The first book that kind of like sparked this idea that I might have a problem was Failure of Nerve by Edwin Friedman. And he talks about the central nervous system being out of whack when you are just the most anxious person in the room. Usually climbs the highest in leadership because they're able to say they want to control. And that part of control is good because people want to be told what to do to a certain extent, or they want clarity. And so having somebody who's going to say, I know what to do, this is what we should do, that can sometimes come from health. But a lot of times when you see these hyper-authoritarian, like want to get stuff done all the time, hyper-productivity could come from a central nervous system that is misaligned, constantly firing. And that's where I found myself after reading Edwin Friedman's book thinking, I like control. I like to win. I like these things. What is going on here? And it's through a lot of conversations with some amazing psychologists, some guests, some people in different industries. I've had maybe this past year, I've done a lot of podcasts with other guests, and they have been just so much smarter, so much more into the psychology, and just a lot of these people have been so key in mentioning things that I go and I follow up with, and I start to see, oh, you know what? There could be a very real thing within my own body that I am just really, really anxious. And not only am I really anxious, but it could be from childhood, it could be genetic, it could be a lot of these things. And so what I started to realize was I wanted perfection, always wanted perfection. And not only did I want perfection, but I wanted to win. And it wasn't always necessarily healthy, meaning I would sometimes blow past my team. I would blow past, leadership. I would just do whatever it took for me to feel that I was winning. Because if you're winning, people love you. And if people love you, then you're safe. And if you're always producing and you're producing great stuff and people want you, that's going to keep you safe. And what I started to realize was that is a narrative in my brain that just didn't work well. And when I started to relax, when I started to enable like what I would consider somatic integration, and that somatic integration was through breathing, through, realizing from the back of the brain all the way to the stomach and all of the signals that my body is sending me I used to have crazy nausea, but I also would drink like 6 or 7, cappuccinos a day. And that's not an exaggeration. Like I would just want to keep going. And what that led to, massive fatigue on my way to burnout. And it started to really I got clear around a couple of things. And one is organizational health. And around that organizational health, the psychology and the organizational health, like those things are inseparable. Like the psychology of leadership, the health of leadership is, you cannot take that away and have a great company culture. Those two are intertwined. There is no way to have, the milk without the cow, so to speak. You got to have both. It's not going to last if it doesn't. And what I found is there are some key roles, and I want to talk about 3 key roles that I find that can lead to wrecking organizations. I also want to talk about the mindset shift that needs to happen within organizational leaders in order for them to correct these massive mistakes. And then the third and final thing is I want to give us all, whether you're a person who's leading an organization, you have your own small business. This also applies to family. I want to talk to us about a method called the RAIN method that is going to help in these things. But first, let's set the table. And I want to give you these 3 roles that can wreck an organization. The first one is a firefighter. And so let's define that. What is a firefighter? A firefighter is somebody who is always putting out the fire within the organization. They are always sounding the alarm, always, ready to suit up, go into the fire, and just, it's fire drill after fire drill after fire drill after fire drill. And you have to ask yourself over a period of time, why are we having so many fire drills within the organization? And a big reason for it is because that leader wants a fire drill. And what do I mean by that? There is a certain brain type that can be addicted to adrenaline. And what I mean by that is the brain type, they actually feel adrenaline like heroin. And if every time there's an emergency and they feel and they have the story of they're the hero, they're the breadwinner, they're the prize fighter, they're the main person, what that tends to do is they tend to seek out and even create fire drills in order to be the one who is leading, in order to be the one who is getting that adrenaline from their own brain. And what that does is that in their head, it signals to them that they're needed. In their own head, it signals to them that they're doing good and that they're leading the organization well. But to the rest of the organization, if they don't have a proper feedback loop, they're probably burning out their organization. They're probably taking them to a level of high adrenaline, and then it's just like crash, and then high adrenaline again, and crash, and day over day over day. And some people, that messes with them because the more cortisol, the more adrenaline, all those things in our body, it just doesn't go well. It doesn't go well at all. It wrecks our body. It wrecks our sleep. And I remember, I'd probably say 8 or 9 years ago, I remember I was sitting with a nonprofit leader who was absolutely just addicted to their own adrenaline. And this person thought it would be wise to buy pallets of bottled water from the back of an 18-wheeler, like go rent an 18-wheeler, stack these pallets, like buy water in bulk and then go sell it on the side of the road to raise money for their nonprofit. And the person was like so far down this narrative. They're like, yeah, we can do 250,000 in one weekend. And I'm like, wait, how are you coming across these numbers? He's like, one bottle is $1, and then per pallet is this and this. And he's like, we'll do all of these corners. And I'm like thinking like, who is the manpower that you're going to have doing this? Like there was just so many cognitive gaps. This person was moving into a place where I noticed that they were extremely sleep deprived. They would not sleep. This person developed tics, like vocal tics, and in certain movements with their hands and their head and their eyes. And eventually that person like lost all cognitive function, literally lost their mind because they wouldn't sleep. And I don't celebrate that in any way, shape, or form. I was just reminiscing with another leader, and he's like, I feel that the people who are just addicted to their own adrenaline, there's 3 things. They lose their mind, they lose their marriage, and in the third thing that this person said, because they're a pastor, they said they lose their ministry. And sure enough, I've seen it time and time again that the rushed, the hurried, the firefighter will lose their mind, will lose their marriage, and will also lose their ministry, the calling that they have. And so what I want to let you know is if you're that person, if you're constantly fighting fires in your organization, you're seeing yourself as the prize fighter, the breadwinner, the hero of the organization, you need to chill. And here's a mindset shift for you. If you're the firefighter, you have to understand this. The fire will never stop. What you need is more firefighters. And so you have to go from a firefighter to a running coach. You have to shift your identity to a running coach. And this is really important. The identity shift is going to be your saving grace. Atomic Habits talks about this is like we don't change our habits based upon outcomes, we change our habits based upon identity. And so when you can start to think less like a firefighter and think more like a running coach does this. A running coach understands pace is important, that you have to find a manageable pace and it has to be built in with bandwidth. One of my favorite apps is the Nike Run Club. It's a beautiful, beautiful app because the way that the Nike app starts you out is it starts you out in this place of feel good. You have to feel good. If you're running, you should feel good. If you're running and you feel terrible, if you're running and you think that it has to be miserable and dreadful and painful, you're doing it wrong and somebody taught you the wrong way. And I think I agree 1,000% with the Nike running app. That coach on there is hilarious. It's a great app if you actually want to start building running. But what I'm telling you is don't actually start a run club. This is an allegory. What you need to do is you have to understand your pace in the organization is important. You need to find a manageable pace and you need to make sure it's built in with bandwidth, and you have to start from a place of joy. And understand this, a slower team is better than being fried. 100%. A slower team is better than being fried. And so as the running coach, it's your job to make sure that you can set a pace that your team can follow and that they can continue to get faster. Now, I'm not saying we're going to burn them out, but you have to have built-in bandwidth for that capacity. And so if you're currently the firefighter of your organization, you need to become the running coach. The second is the enabler. And I'll raise my hand right here. This is 100% me. In my previous roles, when it came to somebody who would lead from an enabler mindset, I was 100% that person, meaning that I didn't know if I could trust my team 100%. And it led to some frustrations to where I was doing 110, 115, 120% of the work because I didn't believe the team could handle a lot of the work. A lot of times I came from places that were, volunteer run or that were, maybe low pay or part-time work. And because of that, in my mind, I'm thinking like this person doesn't have the most time. They don't have the most effort. They don't have the most education, et cetera, making excuses. Those excuses became enablement points for me. And what happened was my team didn't really feel satisfied. They felt like they were only giving partial. And because I was looking down on them and I thought that they were only giving partial, they thought the expectation was to only give partial and not to give 100%. And the mindset shift that happened for me is I went from enabler to strength training coach. And this was the mindset shift. My team needs to get stronger and they love solving their own problems. And what I mean by this is like when you show up to work, you show up to work to get better. 95% of people are showing up because they want to get better. They want life to get better for them. And when challenged in the proper way, people are going to show up 100% of the time. And they also feel good when they're solving their own problems, when you're not coming in like a helicopter parent and fixing things for people all the time. So there's a healthy way to lovingly challenge somebody. And for me, I found that this starts at the beginning of projects. This starts at the beginning of communication, setting a foundation for excellence, reinforcing excellence, iterative progress, meaning we might do it once. We're not going to go with the first one. We all know from, Pixar's book, their storytelling book, the first draft is always going to be bad. We need to do draft 2, draft 3. And so when you have a culture of iterative progress, you're realizing we're getting sharper with each momentum, each movement, we're getting better. And fast feedback loops are key. There's one thing that I talk to my organization and have talked to my teams in the past is feedback happens early and often. And as an enabler, that could sometimes feel difficult and sticky. But if you have a culture of feedback, it's so good. And the final thing I would say for the enablers, have projects written down, have great PM, and have lots of touch points. Those are always going to help because that's going to keep everybody on the same page. The third role in organizations that I feel just wreck shop, that do not help, that actually can be discouraging. This one is what I would consider the controlling. The controlling is a person who is always trying to control every single outcome. And what I would say to this is, I remember one time I had somebody who kept calling me from an organization, and they're like, "Hey, this is happening. Why is this happening?" And they always came back to this why, and I would tell them, I think this person made a mistake, and he'd be like, "Okay, but why? And how can we stop them from making a mistake?" And I'm thinking, well, a couple of things is, I'm in one organization, you're in another organization, they're in a third completely separate organization. There's no way that we can control, 2 to 3 organizations away from us. That's just not how this works. And this person was like, "No, like, I have lawyers calling me. This is a mistake and we need to fix it." And I was almost to the point. I was like, "Well, hey, let me just send an email real quick, get to the bottom of it." But I don't think we need to have like such a detailed conversation around it. Went ahead, sent an email. Email came back in the person, and I just tagged all parties involved. Like, "Hey, I think there might be a communications problem here." And all parties. Lawyer messaged back, "Hey, so sorry for that. Didn't realize that this was, the process. Thank you for letting me know the process." And that lawyer from a different organization was just like, "Okay, cool. Now I know the process. I appreciate that so much." And what I found was that this person who was controlling really didn't realize the effect that they were having on overcomplicating things. And this is the truth. And this is the mindset shift that a controlling individual who has to control every aspect, from the way that they're perceived, from how much people like them, to, just being excellent and trying to avoid mistakes by any possible means, is the mindset shift is you need to become a surf coach. And what do I mean by a surf coach? You have to learn how to ride the waves, because in business and in life, in any creative, thing that you're going to be doing, you are going to have ups and you're going to have downs. The tide comes in and the tide comes out, and you can't control the tide. And so controlling mistakes is like controlling the ocean. It's impossible. And so what I want to let you know is that, first off, you are enough. The controlling person normally has childhood wounds. How do I know? I'm a highly controlling person myself. And that childhood wound is probably been because you had to shoulder an extreme amount of responsibility that was disproportionate to your age at the time. And what that means is like having lots of chores, lots of responsibilities, having very detailed and regimented military-like, processes within your family. And it probably took away some of the joy and the, very flowy feeling that you could have as a child, and snapped you into a mindset of like, everything has to be perfect all the time because I have to keep other people's emotional response, gauged. And what I want to let you know is, one, you're more than enough how you are. Striving and trying to earn attention, that turns off your authentic self. And whenever you turn off your authentic self, not good things happen. And the reason that I know this personally is because from the authentic self flows curiosity. And from curiosity creates a flow state. And from a flow state creates intrigue and mastery and autonomy and purpose. And it's from those things that I'd love to highlight a professional who has talked about this in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. He cites this very, very beautiful study about cats. He talks about like how cats, when they're put into mazes and then they do the right thing and hit the button, that if there is a 4-step process that is followed, the cats will always get better. And he says this after that study, he kind of highlights some of the key times and how these times would drop dramatically, which is good if you want to get out of a maze, and how these cats are performing very, 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 very well. And he says, behavior followed by satisfying consequences tends to be repeated. And those that produce unpleasant consequences are less likely to be repeated. Now, here's a catch-22 with this. I love this so much because a lot of times the controlling person thinks that if they go in there and control an outcome, if they just say, hey, I did not like this, this needs to change. You've heard from me. Get better, get sharper, do better. I don't want to see this again. They think in their mind that is solving it. And I want to let you know that actually is the inverse of a good 4-step process. A good 4-step process to create a good habit is the cue. The first thing you do is you need to make it obvious for a good habit. Second thing is you need to make it attractive. The third thing is you need to make it easy. And the fourth thing is you need to make it satisfying. Now, if those things follow, if you can follow that 4-step process, what tends to happen is you are going to create good habits. And what I mean by that is work habits and the way that you show up to work. You're going to get better and faster if it's obvious, if it's attractive, if it's easy, and if it's satisfying. Obvious is like standard operating procedures. Attractive is like great culture that is celebrated. Easy is that when mistakes happen, it's easy to correct these mistakes. It's easy to find something new and iterative. And then satisfying is essentially, what is that job satisfaction, or your contribution? And this comes from an idea of positive psychology and creating psychologically safe places. What I want to let you know that is so, so, so important is that a lot of times the controlling person will actually do the opposite on the third spot. When it comes to make a habit easy, they make it difficult. And so if you actually make a mistake and this person makes your mistake difficult, if that stage of habit loops with feedback, if it's a difficult conversation, if it's a hard conversation, if it's a deterrent, what tends to happen is that the people will move into something called functional freeze. And I think that's really, really important because, habits really at the core of it are, how we solve reoccurring problems in our environment. If our environment is telling us, oh, you're not good enough every time that you launch, that you do X, Y, or Z, the habit actually can reduce cognitive load. But if it's negative, you're actually reducing cognitive load in the negative space. And so if you want to solve problems, having those feedback loops needs to be really, really easy because, in all honesty, when you make feedback easy, when you make the ability to shift, people are going to respond so much more. And so I think the big takeaway for this is how you delegate as one of these leaders, because you're going to have to enable other people. Whether you're an enabler, whether you're controlling, whether you're the firefighter, delegation is key. And following that 4-step process is key. But there's one key piece of delegation that I want to talk about before we move on to the RAIN method, and that is dirty delegation. And that's when you delegate and you actually disconnect and you don't have any skin in the game. I remember a couple of times a leader that I truly love and we're great friends, but was really fell victim to dirty delegation and would be like, hey, I need you to go tell this person on my behalf. Or, hey, this person's role is changing. You go tell them that this is happening. And I was like, okay, that's perfectly fine. Don't mind doing those things. But one, I'm not that person's direct report. And two, these are more personal things. Like they come better from you. Like it would absolutely work so much better from you. And some of these conversations that I had to have with people were about like their personal life and their behavior. Some of them were like, oh, your job is changing. I'm going to be doing part of your job. And their direct report didn't tell them. And that person's like looking at me like, who are you to tell me what's going on? Another conversation was about like anatomy and the size of another person and how like that could be perceived. And this person's not doing anything wrong. It's just I'm in this weird, awkward position to to ask somebody to like wear baggier clothing because of their size. And it's like, that's not here nor there. And there's nothing going on with it. Just really, really, really dirty, delegation. It probably would have come better from that individual. And when you don't have any skin in the game, when you're delegating, having the hard conversations, the courageous conversations, what tends to happen is all the work that you could have done to enable, that's the Achilles heel. So delegate well, but don't be a part of dirty delegation. Finally, the best solution for all of these things, because you might be thinking, Nick, thank you for the mindset shifts, but how do I practically, somatically in my own body get to this place where I can actually feel these things? Because you might have the head knowledge, but how does it hit your heart? How does it hit your central nervous system? How can you chill? Because I'll be honest with you, leading an organization at a high level, that's stressful. And stress can be good. It can be good at times if you can manage it well. Certain stresses are great. Excessive stresses are not. And so I want to talk to you about the RAIN method. And the RAIN method is whenever you find yourself going back to controlling or enabling or firefighting, you want to follow this process. And the first is to realize what's happening. And you need to find, where this is coming from. You need to realize, oh, you know what? I'm about to start controlling right now. Next thing is very counterintuitive. It's super counterintuitive. You have to allow it. Now, this is really, really counterintuitive, because allowing you to be controlling, allowing you to be enabling, and allowing you to be a firefighter, that sounds counterintuitive, because I just told you all the damages it does, and it will do some damage. But you have to allow. And the reason that you have to allow this is because if you try to stop it, to bottleneck it, you can't get to the next processes. So you have to allow, to a certain extent, I am controlling. I have to allow this to play out, these feelings that I'm having within my own body, wanting to control. I can't just stop it. And the next is you have to investigate. And the investigation portion is really, really key, because that's going to be where you're going to start from in the future. Right now, you're starting from the realization, you're allowing, and then you're investigating. But investigating looks like this. What's happening in my body? Oh, my neck is getting tight. Oh, I get a tightness in my stomach. Oh, you know what? My jaw clenches. Or I squint my eyes and I start to like see red. And on the investigation process, you also want to be able to ask the question, like, what does this remind me of? What am I afraid of? What is happening here? No wrong answers. Just allow whatever needs to come up to come up. And what you're doing is you're creating space for yourself. And in the past, maybe nobody ever created space for you. I know that's kind of like a joke on Instagram and on TikTok of, oh, I'm holding space for you. But the truth of the matter is, if you're constantly in fight or flight, if you're constantly going, if you're in hyper productivity, you don't have the time to hold space. So holding space is key, and holding space to allow you to investigate is huge. One thing that I've been doing is what's helped me somatically integrate is I'll spend about 25 minutes in the morning journaling, and my journaling doesn't look like anybody else's journaling. I actually go on Pinterest and I look up cartoons to draw. What I find is that this takes a lot of time, and this fights against my wanting to get things done quickly. Because if you know anything about drawing, it's very, very difficult, like hand-eye coordination. If you're not good at it, I'm not good at drawing. But it also forces you to slow down and to actually, what do you see here? And it's a good measure of hand-eye coordination. What am I seeing? How can I translate that? How can the hand-eye coordination help with my perception? And it slows me down, and I take about 25 minutes just to do a sketch, something that would take a kid maybe 5 minutes to do. And then after that, I just journal, and I just give about a paragraph of like, what am I feeling? What am I trying to accomplish? Where am I at? And that journaling process, that investigating, is so, so helpful. And finally, the fourth thing is to nurture. When we can start to set a precedence for when we start to feel ourselves being controlling, how can we nurture the healthy part of what needs to happen? And what I mean by that is, when it comes to nurturing, don't nurture the controlling aspect, nurture the outcome that you desire. I know a lot of leaders talk about values, but you have to make space for values. And a lot of times when we say we value something, it's because we don't have it. If it was ubiquitous, if it was everywhere, if diamonds were everywhere, they wouldn't be valuable. And the reason that values are valuable is because they're rare. And for you to participate in the value, you're going to have to do something that's rare. And what is that? It's the RAIN process. You're going to have to realize, allow, investigate, and nurture. That's why slowing down and having time and bandwidth is so important. It's because it's going to allow you to process the things that need to be processed in order for you to move forward. If these things continue to stay unresolved, if these things continue to stay in this place where you don't have space for yourself, you can't make space for other people. And if you can't make space for yourself and other people, the experience of you experiencing you and how others experience you is going to be very, very terrible. So I would say this: utilize the RAIN method. When you find yourself coming to a spot, realize, allow, investigate, nurture. One last thing on nurture that I'd like to say. What does nurture look like? Nurture looks like going for a walk. Nurture looks like, giving yourself a nice pep talk in the mirror. It looks like staying hydrated. It looks like, just the breath method, the breath work of, can you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and hold again for 4 seconds. There are so many different techniques that are available to you to nurture your central nervous system in that moment. So all of those things to say, what I want from you is that your story at work continues to get better for you and for your organization. My name is Nick. If you've enjoyed any part of this, you can let me know on any of the social medias at Nick_Ovaya. I have something for you. You can go to StoryBetter.co and you can start a 90-day StoryBetter journey. Essentially, it is, what are you going to do when it comes to reading, when it comes to your workouts, when it comes to your diet? You need to take care of yourself. You need to activate the RAIN method, and you can do so with a 90-day program I created just for you, StoryBetter.co. Just leave your email, and you'll get the download to start your next 90 days to a better story. So go check that out. Thanks for listening or watching. Till we chat again. Hope you tell the world a great story. Peace.